The orbital station called Infinite Taxonomy floated in the empty space between three star systems. It was a neutral place, built by no single species and owned by all of them together. Here, the conclave of biologists did their most important work. They kept records, they made lists, they decided what was dangerous and what was safe. At the heart of the station was the Galactic Horror Database. Every spacefaring civilization used it. Before you landed on a new world, you checked the database. Before you made contact with a new species, you looked them up. The database told you everything you needed to know: what creatures would hunt you, what creatures you could hunt, and what creatures you should simply avoid. Junior Archivist Il was a being made of living crystal. Her people, the Harmonic Collective, were patient and careful. They made excellent record keepers. For 3 standard cycles, Il had worked in the lower archives, checking old files and fixing small errors. It was boring work, but she did not mind. Order was beautiful. Mistakes were ugly. Her job was to make things clean and correct. On this particular day, she was running a routine scan. The database contained information on more than 8 million species. Sometimes files became corrupted. Sometimes data got mixed together by accident. Her job was to find these problems and fix them before anyone noticed. The scan found an error flag. It was not new. According to the records, this flag had existed for more than 40 standard years. Nobody had ever fixed it. Nobody had even looked at it. The error was simple. Species number 8,840,1203 was listed in 2 categories at the same time. This should have been impossible. Every species in the database was either a predator or prey. Some were both at different stages of life. Some had evolved from one to the other. But no species could be both things at the exact same moment. Il opened the file. Species 8,840,1203, Humanity, Origin World, Earth, Sol System, Orion Arm. Classification, Predator. Classification, Viable Prey Species. Both entries were marked as correct. Both had been by multiple sources. The system had been trying to resolve the contradiction for 4 decades and had failed every time. Il brought the problem to Senior Curator. He was old even by the standards of his species, a slow-moving being covered in thick protective slime. He had more than 10,000 species in his long career. He had seen every kind of error. A simple corruption, he said. His voice was wet and gurgling. 2 species merged together by mistake. Find the original files, separate them. Problem solved. Il returned to her station and began to dig deeper. She pulled the original survey reports. She read the biological assessments. She studied the behavioral analyses. The more she read, the more confused she became. There were not 2 species. There was only one. The humans were real. They lived on a single planet in an unremarkable star system. They had recently begun to explore space. Their file was thick with data. And they were definitely predators. The evidence was clear. Humans had hunted and eaten hundreds of other species on their home world. They had driven huge animals to extinction by chasing them for days without stopping. Their bodies were built for pursuit, forward-facing eyes for tracking prey, long legs for running, hands made for gripping weapons. They could eat plants, but they chose to eat meat. They farmed other creatures like crops. They were efficient, patient, and deadly. But they were also prey. This evidence was equally clear. For millions of years, larger predators had hunted humans: big cats with long teeth, wolves that worked in packs, crocodiles that waded in rivers, snakes, bears, eagles that carried away their young. Humans had spent most of their evolutionary history being eaten. Their psychology showed the marks. They startled easily. They feared the dark. They huddled together in groups for safety. They watched for danger constantly, always looking over their shoulders. These were prey behaviors. These were the instincts of creatures that expected to be hunted. And here was the strangest part: they still hunted each other. The database contained records of human-on-human predation going back thousands of years. Wars, murders, organized violence. Humans killed and consumed each other at rates that would have destroyed any other species. Yet they survived. They grew stronger. Il sat back from her console. Her crystal body hummed with confusion. This was not a database error. The classification was correct. Humans really were both predator and prey at the same time. They occupied both categories simultaneously. She filed a request for a full review. The Conclave would need to send an observation team to human space. They would need to study these creatures directly. They would need to understand how a single species could be two opposite things at once. The request was approved within a cycle. As Il watched the observation vessel prepare to depart, she felt something she had never experienced before in her long career of fixing small errors and maintaining clean records. She felt uneasy. The universe was supposed to make sense. Categories were supposed to be clear. Things were supposed to be either one thing or another. Humans were neither, humans were both. And somehow, that made them more frightening than anything else in the Galactic Horror database. Part 2. The Observation. The observation vessel objective lens was small and quiet. It carried no weapons. Its hull was painted in neutral colors that most species found calming. It was designed to watch without being noticed, to study without interfering. The crew was made of 5 scientists from 5 different worlds. Il had been chosen to lead them. Her crystal body could survive in almost any environment, and her patience was famous even among the Harmonic Collective. The others included a chemical analyst, a behavioral specialist, a historian, and a medical officer. Each was an expert. Each was curious about the human anomaly. They arrived at the edge of human-controlled space after 3 weeks of travel. The humans had spread to 17 star systems in just 2 centuries. This was fast. Most species took 1,000 years to colonize a single neighboring system. Humans built ships and flew into the unknown as if they were being chased. The team made contact with a frontier colony called New Montana. It was on a cold world covered in forests and mountains. The humans there raised animals and grew crops. They had been on this planet for only 40 years, but they had already built towns and roads and farms. The colonists were friendly. They smiled and waved. They offered food and shelter. They seemed happy to meet the alien visitors. But something was wrong. Il noticed it immediately. When the humans smiled, they showed their teeth. This was a threat display among predator species. It meant aggression. It meant danger. Yet the humans seemed to think it was friendly. At the same time, the humans were constantly watching their surroundings. Their eyes moved from face to face, checking for threats. They positioned themselves near exits. They kept their backs to walls. They flinched at sudden sounds. These were prey behaviors. These were the habits of creatures that expected to be attacked. The humans were doing both things at once. They were simultaneously predators showing dominance and prey preparing to flee. The combination was deeply unsettling. The observation team spent 3 days in the settlement, recording everything. They studied how humans interacted with each other. They watched humans work and play. They ate meals with human families and attended human gatherings. Everything confirmed what the database said. On the 4th day, a hunting party invited the team to join them. They were going after a large native animal that had been raiding the farms. The creature was called it weighed more than 1,000 kilograms and had thick armor plates. It was dangerous. Il expected the humans to bring heavy weapons. She expected vehicles and technology. Instead, the hunters carried only simple tools: knives, ropes, light rifles for emergencies. They traveled on foot. The hunt lasted 3 days. The humans tracked through the forest. They did not rush. They did not try to catch it quickly. Instead, they followed it at a steady pace, never letting it rest, never letting it escape. When one hunter grew tired, another took the lead. They worked in shifts, taking turns, but the group as a whole never stopped moving. By the second day, it was exhausted. By the third day, it could barely stand. The humans approached without fear. The kill was quick and clean. The animal had been walked to death. Il had read about this technique in the database. It was called persistence predation. Early humans had used it to hunt animals many times their size. They were not the fastest creatures on their world, but they were the ones that never stopped. They could run for days. Their bodies cooled themselves through sweat while their prey overheated. They were patient and relentless. They were machines built for pursuit. Watching it happen was different from reading about it. The alien observers were horrified. This was not like any hunting they had seen before. It was methodical. It was slow. It was absolutely without mercy. That night, a storm came down from the mountains. The power in the settlement failed. The buildings went dark, and the same humans who had calmly walked a massive beast to death became something different. They gathered together in the largest building. They lit fires and lamps. They kept their children close. Their voices became quiet. Their eyes grew wide. Every sound from outside made them jump. Every shadow made them reach for weapons. One of the colonists, an old woman named, saw Il watching. "You are confused," the woman said. It was not a question. "Yes," Il admitted. "This morning you hunted like apex predators. Tonight you hide like prey. I do not understand." The old woman laughed softly. She gestured for Il to sit beside her. "You think these are different things," said. "They are not. They are the same thing. Our ancestors lived on a world where the night was full of things that ate them. They learned to fear the dark because the dark was dangerous. They learned to stay together because alone they were weak." She paused to add wood to the fire. "But they also learned to fight back. They learned that the things in the dark could be killed. They learned that fear could be used as a weapon. The fear told them when to run and when to fight. It made them careful. It made them smart. And when they stopped running and started fighting, the things in the dark learned to fear them." Il considered this. "So you are afraid because you evolved as prey, but you hunt because you became predators." "No," said. "We hunt because we were afraid. The fear never went away. It lives in our bones. We became hunters because being prey was terrible. We developed weapons because we were scared. We became apex predators precisely because we were prey first. The two things are not separate. They are the same." Outside, something howled in the darkness. The humans around the fire tensed. Their hands moved to weapons. Their eyes went to the doors and windows. "That fear you see," continued, "that is what makes us dangerous. A creature that has never been hunted does not know how to truly hunt. It does not understand what its prey feels, but we know, we remember, and we use that knowledge." The observation team prepared to return to their ship with their findings. They had seen enough. They understood the contradiction now. Humans were not predators or prey. They were both, always, simultaneously. The two states existed in constant tension inside them, and that tension was the source of their power. But before they could leave, a distress call came through the settlement's communication system. A slaver fleet had been spotted in the sector. 3 ships, probably 200 soldiers. They were coming to harvest colonists. They were known throughout the galaxy. They raided frontier worlds and took prisoners to sell. They were efficient and cruel. Standard procedure when they arrived was to surrender or flee. Fighting was pointless. They were too well armed. Il expected the humans to evacuate. She expected panic and fear. She expected the prey response. Instead, she watched the colonists begin to arm themselves. The fear did not disappear. It was still in their eyes, still in the tension of their bodies. But it was changing. It was becoming something else. Something cold, something patient, something hungry. The hunt was about to begin. Part 3: The Demonstration. The slaver fleet descended on New Montana expecting easy prey. Their intelligence said this was a small colony. Farmers and settlers. No military presence. No planetary defense grid, just soft targets waiting to be harvested. They had done this 1,000 times before. They would land, round up the colonists, and be gone before any rescue could arrive. The humans would be processed and sold to labor camps across the galaxy. It was efficient. It was profitable. It was routine. Their 3 ships touched down near the main settlement. 200 soldiers in heavy armor poured out, weapons ready. They spread out through the streets, kicking in doors and searching buildings. The town was empty. No people, no animals, no resistance. The buildings stood silent. The streets were abandoned. The only sound was the wind blowing through empty doorways. The commander, a veteran named, was not worried. Sometimes prey species tried to hide. It never worked. His soldiers had thermal sensors and tracking equipment. They would find the colonists. It would just take a little longer. He ordered search parties into the surrounding forest. The first party did not return. Sent a second party to find them. They found bodies. 5 soldiers killed silently. Their weapons were missing. Their communication devices had been destroyed. There was no sign of their attackers. This was not supposed to happen. Frontier colonists did not fight back. They ran or they surrendered. They did not ambush trained soldiers in the forest. They did not kill quietly and disappear. Ordered his forces to regroup at the landing site. They would stay together. They would use their superior numbers and firepower. They would hunt these humans down. But the humans did not want to be found. From her position in the objective lens, high in orbit, Il watched everything through the ship's sensors. She saw the soldiers cluster together near their ships. She saw small groups of humans moving through the forest, circling, waiting. She saw what was about to happen. The humans were not defending. They were not hiding. They were hunting. Over the next 3 days, the force fell apart. The humans used the same techniques they had used to hunt the. They did not attack directly. They did not engage in open battle. They would have lost such a fight. Instead, they became persistent predators. They picked off stragglers. Anyone who wandered too far from the group disappeared. They found soldiers in the morning with their throats cut. They found sentries dead at their posts with no sign of what had killed them. They the rest. Whenever the soldiers tried to sleep, something would happen, an explosion in the distance, a scream in the dark, strange sounds that kept them awake and afraid. The humans knew how to be hunted. They knew what fear felt like, and they used that knowledge to create fear in others. They left signs, messages carved into trees, symbols drawn in blood on the hulls of the ships, small things that said, "We are here, we are watching, you are not safe." The symbols meant nothing, but the effect was powerful. They began to see threats everywhere. By the second day, the soldiers were exhausted and paranoid. They shot at shadows. They fought with each other over small things. Their discipline was breaking down. Their commander gave orders that no one followed. By the 3rd day, they tried to leave. They ran back to their ships to escape. The humans had sabotaged the engines. The final hunt took only a few hours. The trapped and terrified scattered into the forest. The humans followed. They did not rush. They did not need to. They knew this forest. They had been learning it for 40 years. They had been here for 3 days. When it was over, there were no survivors. Il returned to the conclave 3 weeks later. The observation team had recorded everything. They had seen what humans could do when they stopped being prey and became predators. They had watched farmers and settlers destroy a professional military force. She presented her findings to the full assembly. Representatives from more than 2,000 species listened in silence. "The database is not in error," Il said. "Humanity must be classified as both predator and prey because they are, in a fundamental way, both things at the same time." She showed them the data, the evolutionary history, the psychological profiles, the recordings from New Montana. "Humans are a species at war with themselves," she continued. Their ancestors were prey. They remember what it feels like to be hunted. That memory lives in their bodies and their minds. They are afraid of the dark. They fear predators. They startle at sudden sounds. All of these are prey responses. She paused to let this sink in. But they did not accept being prey. They refused. They developed weapons because they were afraid. They learned to hunt because they hated being hunted. They became apex predators precisely because they knew what it felt like to be food. And that knowledge makes them different from any pure predator or pure prey species. The assembly murmured, "This was strange, this was new, this changed things." "Their fear makes them cautious," Il said. "They see threats everywhere. They prepare for danger constantly. They never assume they are safe. But when they decide to fight, their aggression is absolute. They do not stop. They do not rest. They pursue their enemies until those enemies are destroyed." She showed them the final recording from New Montana. The commander, cornered and alone, facing a group of human farmers with blood on their hands. "The expected prey," Il said. "They found something else. Something that remembered being prey and hated it. Something that had spent millions of years learning to turn fear into violence." Senior Curator rose slowly from his seat. His slime glistened in the light of the chamber. "What do you recommend?" he asked. "The dual classification must remain," Il said, "but I recommend a new warning flag. Standard engagement protocols will not work against humans. They cannot be predicted using normal prey models because they are not normal prey. They cannot be predicted using normal predator models because they are not normal predators. They are something new." The conclave voted. The decision was unanimous. The Galactic Horror database was updated. Species 8,841,203, humanity, retained both classifications, apex predator and viable prey species. A new warning flag was added in bright red text: extreme caution, threat response unpredictable. Species demonstrates prey flight behavior and predator pursuit behavior, often simultaneously or in rapid succession. Standard engagement protocols unreliable. Recommended response: avoidance. Across the galaxy, spacefaring civilizations received the update. Navigation charts were quietly adjusted. Trade routes were moved. Exploration vessels were redirected away from human space. Nobody wanted to test the new classification. They stopped raiding human worlds entirely. The loss of their fleet at New Montana was not just a defeat. It was a lesson. These creatures that looked like prey, that acted like prey, that showed all the signs of prey, were something far more dangerous. And on 100 human worlds, people went about their lives. They raised their children. They built their cities. They watched the stars with eyes that held both hope and fear. They did not know about the database. They did not know about the warning flag. They were simply being what they had always been. Hunters who remembered being hunted, predators shaped by fear, prey that had learned to bite back. Somewhere in the galaxy, an alien captain looked at the updated star charts on his navigation display. A region of space was now marked in yellow: human territory. The recommended course took his ship around it, adding 3 weeks to his journey. He did not complain. He did not try to save time by cutting through. He had read the database entry. He had seen the footage from New Montana. He understood what those creatures were capable of. They were prey. They were predators. They were both, always, forever. And the galaxy had learned to give them space. The end.